We have some sad breaking news to report. Legendary comedian Don Rickles has died. He was 90 years old. The Emmy Award-winning icon passed away Thursday morning at his home in Los Angeles. Entertainment Tonight senior news editor Jen Peros joins us now by phone. Jen, what a big loss to the entertainment industry. What are you hearing?
Yeah, a huge loss. You know, I feel like everybody was expecting 2017 to kind of start with not as many celebrity deaths as we got in 2016. But yeah, when this name was just announced, a couple minutes ago, a lot of people were really shocked and saddened. Of course, Don, who is probably one of the most legendary and famous comedians of all of our times, passed away early this morning, and his publicist actually confirmed to Entertainment Tonight that he had died at home, surrounded by his family, of course, his wife. Of over 50 years, and his daughter. And yeah, I think, we're still waiting for celebrity tributes to pour in. I think the news is still really fresh. But this is a really big hit to the movie, to the TV, and to the entire comedic world.
Yeah, he was known as the merchant of venom. He kind of knew how to insult people, but get away with it where it wasn't sort of mean or rude. What can you tell us about Don Rickles' legacy?
Yeah, so, I think a lot of people, just me even reading stories right now about his early days, he was one of those guys that started to be an actor. It just didn't work as well as he wanted to, so he got into comedy, which was always his number one love. And really what made him big was Frank Sinatra. He was performing in a club down in Hollywood in 1957, and Frank Sinatra was always known as that guy who you really didn't want to insult in a joking manner way, because you never knew if Frank was going to take it funny or not. And Don had made the first joke about Frank, and he just completely erupted in laughter and just cracked up. So that kind of really set him into the entire Hollywood scene with Frank Sinatra's endorsement. And since then he was kind of known as the number one comedian that would always show up at a roast. Is always gonna be there and say those jokes that no other comedians wanted to say. And yeah, he was kind of known as that guy who took it one step too far, but everybody always appreciated. And he had a legendary career of over 60 years. Many close friends. I mean, Bob Newhart, of course, was his famous best friend. I mean, they still live next door to one another. And what we're hearing just now that actually just broke, Don actually has a new TV show coming out called Dinner with Don. It's an AARP video series that they were going to release. There's 10 episodes that we can expect. Now, I'm not sure when they were shot or if they were all finished. But basically, he is dining with fellow comedian friends, and each episode is going to go through each person, and they're all going to be dining at one of Don's favorite LA area restaurants. We know that Billy Crystal, De Niro, Jimmy Kimmel, Amy Poehler, Vince Vaughn, and Martin Scorsese all were part of that show. So yeah, so we're just waiting now to see more information of when that's going to air, when that's going to come out. But I think, yeah, of course, now everyone is just starting to let the news sink in.
Yeah, Jen, you were talking about Frank Sinatra and how he helped sort of jumpstart his career in a way, and he sort of took the jokes that he had towards Frank Sinatra in a way that really helped his career. He was a big-time person out in Vegas, on the big screen, in television as well. Johnny Carson called him Mr. Warm. There was a nickname that he coined for him. Why was he so influential in the comedy world?
I think he was a comedian that took it one step too far. Was the first person to say everything that people weren't sure if it was PC or not to say. But Don was just that guy that reminded you of the man that lived next door, and everybody wanted to be friends with him. And he was like everybody that somebody knew and reminded you of whether your grandpa or your father or your best friend. And yeah, I mean, he was a mainstay on Johnny Carson as well as Letterman. I mean, Letterman had him on often, and those two guys really treated Don with such respect, and they really admired him, and you could tell how well respected he was in the comedy world.
Yeah, he won a 2008 Emmy, Primetime Emmy, for a documentary about his life called Mr. Warmth, that nickname we were just talking about. What do you think it is about him that just attracted him to so many people, viewers and Hollywood celebrities alike?
Yeah, I think it's just, especially with celebrities and famous people, I think a lot of the normal folk tiptoe around them. They're not sure, can you insult them? Can you make jokes about a celebrity? But Don was always the first person to make that joke, even if you were the most famous person in the world. I mean, I was just reading a story basically that he was performing at Ronald Reagan's the second inaugural ball back in 1985, and of course Frank Sinatra was performing there, and he told the president, I will perform if Don Rickles can come with me. So Don, of course, came to Reagan's inaugural ball, and of course got the microphone and just started going off on all these jokes. And of course, the president was not excluded from that. And he started going off all these jokes, and he said, am I going too fast for you, Ronnie? And the president just completely, started cracking up. And that definitely was one of the performances that was one of the highlights of his career. And yeah, I do think that he needs to be commended and given credit for as being one of the first comedians to go to Vegas and to have his own stand-up show and kind of start a huge industry and kind of paved the way for so many comedian careers. He was the first of everything, and you can tell that he was loved by so many people.
Our folks over at Entertainment Tonight confirming that comedian Don Rickles has died. I'm joined by Jen Peros. Jen, a comedian and director Carl Reiner once said that every star in Hollywood felt that they hadn't made it unless they had been insulted by Rickles. Why was he such an influence on Hollywood?
That's the thing. It's like, he was the most famous comedian, famous face. I mean, he just took it, one step too far. Listen, like, not too many comedians even today. I mean, can you even think of one that are known for, for making these abrasive jokes about somebody, jokes that, nobody else wants to say.
Yeah.
But exactly, he just made every celebrity feel like they were his best friend. And, celebrities felt like, okay, well, if Don Rickles says something insulting about me, I've made it. I mean, and he kind of, he basically used a way to insult people as his shtick, and he would even insult members in the audience. I mean, he would call them dummies and hockey pucks. That was his famous phrase to call people. But yeah, I think everybody loved him. I mean, he was a friend of so many famous celebrities. I mean, from Bob Hope, Kirk Douglas was a dear friend of him. And then again, like Don, his later years he was a famous person that showed up at everybody's roast. I mean, he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Friars Club here in New York City about 3 years ago. And from what I've heard about friends there, I mean, it was a night where every celebrity kind of turned their jokes to Don, making him feel the way that he made them felt for years. But in the end, Don got up there and ended up being the funniest guy of the night, and kind of, really took home the award for being the center of attention. So, but yeah, it's a huge loss for all comedians, I think, everywhere. And now we're just going to see, how he's going to be remembered and what his legacy is going to be. We do know that the funeral is going to be private. There's not going to be a public memorial as we know of as of yet. But I do think that that's going to change, because I think that he's left such a lasting impact and legacy that people are going to want to celebrate his life and remember all those funny moments that he brought to so many people.
Yeah. We felt like we all knew him in many ways, and just such a mark on so many people's childhood and life in general. Our Jen Peros from Entertainment Tonight breaking the news about Don Rickles' death at 90. We'll have much more on Entertainment Tonight. We look forward to the show tonight, Jen. Thank you for joining us.